Alderman Flowers. Here. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Arnowitz.
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Carter.
Present.
Chairman Schmidt.
Here.
4 present, you have a quorum.
Okay, here's the motion I will entertain right now. Is there a motion that we consider Board Bill number 94? I make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, let's call the roll, please.
Alderwoman Flowers.
Aye.
Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Arnowitz.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Carter.
Aye.
Chairman Schmidt.
Aye,
4 aye votes.
thank you. Alderman Carter may need to leave us because he's also on the other committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, who's bringing up the administrative fines? Let me just introduce it kind of briefly, and if somebody wants to sit in the hot seat up there.
The Alderman was out there.
Put Melvin in their chief.
So I just wanted to advise the committee that over the past couple of, maybe it's only been the past year, I know the health department has been talking about this a lot. The building division currently has a process where we can send people directly to court, or we can have an administrative fine process. This basically reflects the same sort of regime that the building division has. In fact, if anybody wants to take a look, I didn't tear down a whole bunch of trees, but chapter 25.33, which is in the city code, has the building division process that is basically the same process that the health department will now have. And I'm sure that Ms. Moore will tell us more about that. The difference on this is that there's a schedule of fines, which you can find beginning on page 9 of the non-standard fines within Board Bill 94. Ms. Moore?
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to be here to testify in support of this board bill. Let me first say that it was, our focus in public health is around assessment, assurance, and policy development. And through our assessment and looking at environmental health, we were noticing a lot of complaints, and it seemed to be that we would go out and there wouldn't be any action. Well, I was talking to, and I told him I was going to say this today, it was Alderman Bosley that said to me, take a look at the board bill that's in the building division. He said, because he was complaining about complaints in his community, in his ward, and I said, well, we go out, we give an opportunity to the resident to comply, to make the adjustments to abate the problem. We come back, and we're still giving them time to do that. They get issued a citation, we go into court, it takes a while to get on the docket, and then it's just a circle. And then they ask for a continuance. Or by the time we get back out there, the issue has been resolved. And it takes a long period of time. You're talking 6 months or greater. And it looked like, from where I was sitting, it was looking as if we weren't being responsive. So I said, well, okay, let me take a look at it. And thanks to the city councilor's office, we worked with Bart Burkett, we worked with our staff, and really took a look at what was going on. And I know one of the things that we always want to be mindful of is, so what is this going to cost us? Because we had gone out, and I'll just give you an example. We were in Alderman Bosley's ward. We covered a 2-block radius. And the time and effort that was spent doing that took away and added also to the other details and duties that my community sanitarians were going to do. So when I look at community sanitation violation, that's a type of a violation. We had an annual number of about 320. Of those that were a rate of repeat cases, 0.19. We said, well, that's not that much. Oh, yes, it is. Because when you consider 8 hours a day and all the things that we're doing, and we have to continuously going out there, it's as if we're running in the sand and we're not really getting that far.
You only had 320 community sanitation?
over this time period.
Oh,
These are just projections. Oh, yes, we did have more.
I would think.
Yes, yes.
Just
So
in that
what we're
range.
looking at, if you follow that, the percentage of time, the percentage of fines paid for the first time, 0.33 of that 320. The ones that would be doubled, 0.67. So, and a fine amount would be about $175. So the total first offense revenue would be about $14,784. Doubled would be about $75,000. The total second revenue would be about 7. And the second offense double would be about 28. So the total revenue you're averaging, and again, these are estimates, 125,362. So that's just community sanitation for the time period that we were basing it on historical data from the health department cases that were referred to court. And we did a comparison also based on historical data from the building division as well.
Okay, so are there questions from the committee? Vice Chair Flowers?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Okay, so if someone gets a citation, they go to regular housing court? Is that what you're saying, the court?
If it's a citation, community sanitation court, yes.
Okay.
Violation, yes.
All right, so here in section 7, number 8, and line 8, or line 9, it says, recipient of administrative citation may contest that there was a violation of code, that he or she is responsible party by completing a request for administrative hearing petition and returning it to the Department of Health. What does that mean? Bureau along with the non-refundable filing fee. What does that mean?
Alderwoman, what page are you on?
It's on page 5 of 11.
Five of 11, section,
7,
Seven.
line 8.
any recipient of an administrative citation may contest that there was a violation of the code, or that he or she is responsible party for completing a request for administrative hearing.
Yeah, if I may, I think you were answering that right now today. If you had a citation, it would go to the municipal court. But this would add another tool where right now today, if we had this ordinance that an administrative fine could go to an administrative fine hearing officer, and that would be another tool. And there are some other advantages to that too. But yeah, this would give us a different process, not a municipal court process, but a different process.
So there's an administrative fine officer?
Yeah, just as in the building division, they have an administrative fine hearing, and it's on the record, it's recorded, and if the person wants to appeal it, there's the section 536 of the state statute says you can take it to circuit court and appeal it. So the due process that's required is built in.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now.
Alderman Arnowitz.
So Barb, what you're saying is, instead of, it doesn't really hit, with this, it doesn't really have to go to a housing court over there. It can go strictly to administrative hearing officer, just like we do with public nuisances?
This is a new tool.
Okay.
And also it has the provision that if they're not paying, they can, the city can attach a lien. So when you have these problems with these out-of-town people,
Right.
you know, out of the country that you can't ever reach, there's another new tool that you have. So it offers the city sort of a new tool in attacking these environmental health problems.
So then it avoids us, you know, for them asking for continuances as they go along then.
And it doesn't mean you can't cite the same person who's causing environmental health problems in municipal court. It just gives you a new tool to really take a new angle and try to repair that problem through the administrative fine process. And the building division has been using it. I was in the problem property division when that was devised, and it has not been successfully challenged, so it seems like a very good process that works very well.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Burkett, first of all, thank you for putting this together. And it reflects what we have in the building division, which I believe you also worked with. So where is the provision with regard to a lien? I didn't remember that.
Let me see.
It might be another law, I'm just not entirely sure.
I think there's a reference. I don't want to slow your proceedings, but I do need a second.
I know it says in accordance with applicable law in section 12. So that might be it.
12, I see,
Yeah, so are they actually doing that in the building division? Because I've not been accustomed to them actually putting a lien on any property when they're making the charges on the building code violations.
You know, I can't speak with any specificity because now I'm in the corporate division and I'm not involved. Alan Schmidt is the city councilor that is involved with that, I believe. So I don't want to say something that I don't know to be the case.
Okay,
And section 12, yeah, upon being recorded in the same manner required by state law or the Uniform Commercial Code, a lien may be imposed on the real or personal property of any defendant entering a plea, pleading guilty to or found guilty to the violation. So it adds to the collectability of some of these, and I think that might be helpful in the case where someone is absentee or very absentee, as in the case of, you know, sometimes even in another country.
so let me ask Ms. Moore then, is it our intent then, if we have some of the violators who are continuing to waste a lot of city time and community quality of life, would we be interested in allowing a lien to be placed on that person's property?
we're gonna work with the citizen and then work through the city process to ensure that we cover all bases and that we act accordingly to the ordinance.
All right, that's a good answer. I appreciate that.
Chairman.
Are there any other questions from, yes?
I do. Okay, so if your animal gets out and gets picked up by animal control and you refuse to get it spayed or neutered, is that a citation? Or you don't want to comply? What is that considered? Is that a citation?
I don't believe it's on our non-standard.
No, it's
line.
not on
Oh.
here, but in the case if someone's dog gets out and picked up by animal control, and they do not want to, I know back in, when Alderman Clay was here, we passed an ordinance about spay and neuter and so on and so forth. And if your dog, if you had a boarding license, I believe, or a show dog license,
Licensed through the Missouri Department of Agriculture through the state, yes.
then you didn't have to have your animal spayed or neutered. But what if you refuse in order to get your animal back? Is that a citation?
Would you like me? I don't believe I've ever seen a citation for that. I may be wrong, but if you had a dog that was picked up, and I'm speaking kind of theoretically, but if you had a dog that was picked up and you got a letter about these are the things you need to do to retrieve your dog, and in fact you didn't want to do those things, I believe, and I'm not giving anybody any legal advice, but I believe your course of action would be to go to the circuit court, to equity division, and to ask for a replevin action, or to somehow, I believe that would be your action, because you'd be trying to compel the government to do something that was against it. I don't believe it would be put into municipal court now.
So that's not the case where you would ask for an administrative hearing?
I would not, and I certainly did not anticipate that. I don't think anyone else did. I think that your remedies would be different in that case, and I think that you have some when you want to contest a law, but I don't think that's this.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, as I understand it, Board Bill 94 is designed to take whatever our current provisions in law are, and so if there's a fine that's or rather if there's a violation which is in the rest of the animal control legislation, then this provides simply another process for us to try to get greater compliance earlier. Okay. Any other questions from the committee? If there's not, I will entertain a motion that we pass Board Bill 94 out of committee with a do pass recommendation.
I make the motion.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Please call the, is there an objection to previous rule? Hearing none, Board Bill 94 come out of committee with a do pass recommendation. Board Bill number 66. TNR.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy to be here. I'm very excited to introduce this bill in committee this morning. It's kind of the culmination of several years of work on the part of the Director of Health, our Commissioner of Health, the women from the TNR Trap Neuter Return Task Force, and the City Councilor's Office. And this is just formalizing a practice that is already occurring in the city with respect to how to deal with feral cats and cat colonies. And I can speak personally from an issue in the 6th Ward at California and Lafayette, where we had a huge feral cat colony issue, and the TNR task force women stepped in, volunteered their own time, many hours, countless hours, to get these cats vaccinated and neutered or spayed and then returned into the colony. And the neighborhood is very grateful for that effort because it turned a nuisance problem into something that's very controlled now and supported by the neighborhood. So I'm introducing this bill. I'm going to let the experts on the issue talk, and then I'm happy to answer questions after they testify. But we have, are you speaking this morning? So the Commissioner of Health and then a representative from the TNR task force as well.
Yeah, this was spoken about at a continuing legal education presentation at St. Louis University most recently. So this is at the highest levels of the legal community at this point.
Again, thank you for allowing me to be here. And this goes back to, and I will become very repetitious in what I say, in that this is truly public health. It is about assessment, assurance, and then, as you said, it was heard in the legal realm, and it's policy development. I consider this more than just a job. This was truly about partnership. This was, we recognize that we can't be everything to everyone. And this is how you bring the public to the table, and they came graciously to the table to assist us with handling the feral cats. We had complaints, we saw a need. We assessed, we saw a need that there were problems with feral cats. There were a few people who really didn't understand. That's when you bring in your partners to help educate. Because many times when public health goes out, it's government coming in to tell us what we need to do and why we need to do it. But this was where our partners came to the table and really helped educate me, my staff, and the community on the importance and significance of having a partnership and releasing cats back into the community, into those colonies, and how you control the overpopulation. And that's what this is about, really controlling the overpopulation. So one of the things that I want to really focus on is how you manage that. And we did that by developing a TNR task force, thank you, to establish a viable approach to animal control operations. We shared the plan with other city cat welfare groups and sought input. And we promoted TNR as a viable, effective approach to community cat management to citizens and the community. We provided our information to officers and made referrals to groups and explained the practices of TNR. One example that really came to mind were we had a situation, 2 incidences with Human Services. So you said, well, how does that touch anybody else? So Human Services was moving, relocating individuals from the homeless community. And they had animals, they had pets. And we asked that TNR come in and assist us with moving and relocating those pets. So again, it's not in isolation, it really is about partnership. So then what we decided, and this is still in progress, allow for officially sanctioned authorized cat colonies, including registering cat colonies and their managers. It's so important that we know where these colonies are, not to disrupt, but to have them on our radar. We just had a recent situation in one area where we didn't know where the colony was, and then it became a public issue, and that the public became aware of it because another city agency went in to remove those cats. And remember, we want to do everything humanely as possible. And that's what our team and our partners are about, in helping us understand what we need to do and how we need to do it. So the more times that we know where the colonies are, then we can alert. Because sometimes in business, we do things with our left hand, but we never think about putting them together, that those services come together. And we've seen that in my fiscal operations. It's fiscal and programmatically. So what we do in the community, whether it's through the building division, through streets, we need to make sure that our other partners know. So that's that whole focus of why we want to make sure we have a handle on where those colonies are. When the alderpersons called us, I know Alderman Arnowitz has called us about a situation where there was a home, and we went in and we shared that with our TNR partners. We have identified space over at our vector control building where we house and have a little section for them to utilize as well. So I think it's in the best interest of what we all need to be focusing on and doing at this point to continue this relationship, and so that we can be here and to invoke this ordinance so that people understand. And there will be instances where individuals don't understand. Government can come in and explain, but then we can take the softer approach as well and have our partners come in and work with individuals. Because many people out there don't mind working with us to establish a colony. We have a partner in the mayor's office who has been very supportive of this. Patrick is one of our champions who works with us on this. So, and I just applaud Alderwoman Gracias and Alderwoman Flowers for all their assistance in moving this forward and understanding how strong and grateful we are to have this partnership.
Okay, so as was previously said by the sponsor, TNR has been going on for quite a while. There have been a number of people who have made it very clear to me what the issues have been for a long time. So can we kind of outline what difference this particular legislation makes? I understand that we have a policy and we're in partnership now, and at one time that wasn't necessarily the case. I also understand that in most instances, at least it seems to me, the way this crops up is somebody's upset and says, you know, these folks keep coming in and they're feeding all these cats, and we're trying to get rid of these cats, and da-da-da-da. So how is this legislation designed? I know you talked about a piece of it in terms of identifying and mapping out where the colonies are. There's something in here about sponsorship and a process. Can you outline that process a little more?
Let's go back and talk about, I want to say it was 2011 that we euthanized about 1,054 cats. So when I look forward and I look at today, our cat euthanasia has decreased by 83%. We have trapped, neutered, and released about 907 cats in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, in 2013. So when you think about, and again, going back to being humane in what we do, if you think about one cat, I have to remember this data, one cat can have a litter of 12 times 10, which is like 1,200 cats, right? So if you have a male and female, 8 months later, you have 4, 8, 12, 16 cats. 16 months later, I mean, the numbers just exponentially.
I understand the purpose. Why don't we get the legal then? Because
Okay.
what I'm trying to get at is, okay, I hope, that this committee understands the aspect of why we're doing this. The question is, we've already started on that path, because you already said we're doing that in 2013, 85% fewer were euthanized. So what I'm trying to figure out, or at least let people know about, because I think we've read this, is what process, what policy changes are we making in a process that we're creating that has something to do with sponsorship and responsibilities and how we're going about doing this. So perhaps if you want to sit up here, Ms. Burkett.
Can I clear something up while she sits down? We are not requiring sponsors or colony caregivers to register specific addresses with the city. We're doing it by zip code, and that was something that we came to an agreement on with respect to the way it's working in other parts of the country.
Okay. This doesn't say anything about that. So that's how you're handling it, is by zip code? Because I don't.
No, it is in here. It's on page 5, line under C, number 3.
As a duty of the sponsor.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Zip codes are pretty big, but go ahead.
Oh, you asked about the sponsor
The-
aspect?
No, the whole bill. I'd like to know what changes does this make from what we're currently doing because we're already doing this. We've already said we have 85% fewer. I've been hearing for the last 3 or 4 years that we have lots of groups that are going out and doing TNR. I mean, I've been hearing that a lot. I've been promoting it a lot, okay? So I want to know, legally speaking, which is what we're passing here, what is this board bill change? What is the process now, including the sponsorship?
I think that what it changes is it kind of marries the TNR concept with the animal code and puts it into the animal code and gives people, for example, and we're acknowledging the sponsors, their role in it.
And what is their role?
Their role is to go in, identify the colonies, and to spay and neuter the cats, clip their ears so they're easily identified, and then release them back into the community.
All right. And the health department identifies who those folks are going to be. That's what I want to hear about.
Yeah.
I want to hear so that when Mrs. Abernathy calls me and says, there's a bunch of people next door to me, they're feeding those darn cats again, what are you going to do about this? You know, how are you going to deal with this? We can all outline, and more people will know this because they're going to see this, exactly what this process is. There's a new day in St. Louis, and here it is.
Exactly.
Can I make a suggestion? It might make sense to have the TNR task force.
No, I want to hear legally right now what the process is. Then it would be good to hear from them exactly how they're going to fit into this process, but I want to know the process first. That's what we're doing, is the bill. Thank you.
So we have the sponsors that are coming to the table, that are participating in the task force, that are known to the health department, that are known to the commissioner. They have requirements, so they're not just off doing something loose. That bill is baked into the Alderwoman's bill. They have requirements. They have to resolve complaints with the health department. They have to maintain records. They have to provide training. They have to report to the Department of Health, which is an additional level of scrutiny and, you know, bureaucracy, if you will. They are working with the Department of Health so that if there's a problem and it's identified, I mean, theoretically, they might lose their sponsorship. They've already been working with the department as volunteers, so I think there's a very high level of trust, and the people that the commissioner has allowed to be sponsors have developed a relationship with her and have gained her trust. But that's in the bill, so it's not very loose. They have requirements that they're going to follow. There's requirements here as to what disposition of the cats, what's going to happen, who may destroy a feral cat. It's very narrow, so no person may knowingly poison or cause them to be poisoned. That was a concern of the sponsors, if people were aware of the colonies. That's why we have that section. The health commissioner, you see throughout, may by written order, can act for the purpose of controlling disease, and the laws that we already have through the animal code. So we're not losing any protection. We're only adding this level of recognizing this. There are requirements for the cats are going to be ear-tipped. What's going to be a trap, neuter, release cat, a member of a cat colony. We know what they sponsors have to do that. And it also is a defense if someone is does get a ticket they get a summons for doing, keeping animals out of doors, keeping their cat out of doors like they're not supposed to. They'll be able to say, ear-tipped cats are exempt from that. They'll be able to, it'll marry with the existing code to allow the protection for people who are doing this as volunteers. I don't know if there's anything I'm missing.
Okay, so.
And it's still unlawful, and I think that was, interesting. It's still unlawful to turn an animal loose. You still can't take your domestic animal and turn them loose. This was to address the situation that the commissioner, when they were killing, thousands of cats, and they were still having problems. So this was the situation that's come in, and this is what's intended to regulate it.
So when the police are called because two people are fighting over whether somebody can go and feed cats and so forth on a property, will the sponsor have some sort of paperwork that shows that they have authorization as a sponsor to be dealing with feral cats in that community, so that there's not this argument that there's peace disturbance and therefore the police have to lock those people up?
In section C on page 5 that we were just looking at, the sponsor is required to maintain records that they are a sponsor, and I think they should be required to step forward and explain how that is functioning properly.
Okay, so
And
through the,
if not,
through
I
the
think that's
process,
complaint-
through the process, we will likely have something like that to try to take care of it.
And we drafted a letter that
Good.
we have for the residents, so explain TNR, what they're gonna be doing, how they will do it. And as you know, the complaints come in through CSB, we are the first line to see that, and then the communication is over to TNR to kind of follow.
So those two hands that we were talking about
Yes.
earlier, now that the police
Yes.
department is a city department, presumably they would know about this, the NSOs would know about this, the aldermen would know about this, so that when something comes on, we say, oh yeah, you know that, we have these particular groups and they're the ones that are taking care of our cats. So if we finish with that, I think we have people that were signing up to speak from this, yeah, it's helpful when I can read the handwriting, but there's a Susan something, Baru? Bauer, if you take one of the seats, please. Thank you.
Would it be most helpful for you guys if I were to talk a little about the ordinance or just about TNR and why it's effective and how it works? What would be most
Anything you'd like? You're,
Oh, which would be most effective or
Do
helpful?
the letter. How it's effective, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, so why is it effective? So the cat neuter return is actually the only effective and the only humane way to achieve population control for feral cats. It's also the cheapest way, and that's something that we haven't talked about today yet. In terms of why is it the only effective way, I can give you a case study. In 1975, there was an experiment on an island called Marion Island, which is a subarctic island where there were about 2,500 cats. And there's no access to the island, so no new cats could come onto the island. No people were bringing new cats onto the island. And they set about an experiment where they were going to eradicate all the cats on this island. And does anyone want to guess how long it took? How long do you think it took
took to what?
to
Oh, to
kill
kill
all the
all of them?
cats
They
on the
never
island?
did.
What?
They never did.
It took 20 years.
No.
And they were employing very aggressive, inhumane methods of killing the cats and persistent. So they first sprayed the island with the distemper virus and they infected 65% of the cats who died. What happened then is a perfect illustration of why killing the cats does not work to control populations. It's called the vacuum effect. And this is a well-documented phenomenon, it's not isolated to cats. It's when a population is decimated, you'll create a void and new members of the population will just move in and will actually multiply more prolifically because there's less competition for resources. That's what happened on this island. They killed some cats, and the cats multiplied more prolifically. And it's worth mentioning also that that kind of containment doesn't happen in an urban area or even a rural area, because if you were to try to control the population by killing the cats, you would just be removing them. Not only would they multiply more prolifically, but you would also be dealing with the influx of cats from abandoned pets, from the ones that you miss, and so it would really be impossible to control a population by catching and killing cats. Absolutely impossible. It would be like trying to empty the ocean with a thimble. It does not work. TNR actually does work to control the populations, so that what you have is a stable population, and then you'll gradually have some attrition. It's humane and it's effective. It's also the cheapest, the absolute cheapest way to achieve population control, especially when it's working through partnerships with rescue organizations and nonprofits who are working pretty much for free. But even tossing that issue out, the cost of killing a cat, just killing the cat, and this doesn't include the cost of actually sending a worker out to track the cat, and it doesn't include the cost of boarding the cat. But the cost of actually killing a cat is $60 more or less. And does anyone want to guess what the cost of spaying and neutering a cat is? Well, it's $25. That's what we pay, and that includes a rabies shot. So you can actually spay and neuter 3 cats for every 1 cat that you would kill. And that's really, really important, because the killing doesn't work, and it's also way more expensive. So that's why it's important. And does anybody have any questions, other questions, concerns?
Why do we do this and get everybody, because we have 4 people here, and then we can
Okay.
ask the questions, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. So Diane Marcella, please.
Susan covered very well the why TNR works. I wanted to speak just a little bit towards why an ordinance is important. When it's official that a city or a government agency or a department is supportive of this, you will get people that will step forward and ask for help before there's a problem. So otherwise, people that are feeding cats, if they think that if they're found out, the big bad government's gonna come in and kill them, they're gonna hide. They're not gonna say anything, and 2 cats will become 12, 12 will become a lot. What it also does, it gets us out and volunteers out into the community and working with people. So there have been other instances when you're working with people on animal issues, you deal with some of the human issues as well. So it does go hand in hand. We can spot some other issues and alert the health department. People want help with the situation, and they need to know that the government, or the government as they see it, will support them. And we have been able to get cooperation from people that otherwise will not even answer the door. And the population just gets worse. The other piece of it is when the ordinance is supported, it's easier to educate individuals, because people want to say, what is this and why do you do it? And that allows us to go out and do it, and to help resolve some disputes. Often, I mean, the ordinance is directed towards feral cats, but the cats get there because pet owners, pet caretakers aren't necessarily responsible, or they're not able to be responsible to get their cats spayed and neutered. So we will also work on that front as well. So if somebody's letting, Fluffy out who's not fixed because they can't get Fluffy to the vet, having the task force out there will help identify those issues and target areas that maybe we just need to provide transportation to them. And we're also actively supported and looking for support by rescues and shelters, that when we find kittens or abandoned animals that are friendly that can be adopted, to get them off the streets, so we can hopefully avoid some of the abuse situations. So when we can go out there and stand and say, we are supported and here is the information, that gives us some credibility for people to help us and cooperate. And when we knock on doors, or if we're sitting in alleys, we have that. Otherwise, we're not going to get the support out there, and we're not going to get volunteers if it's not
Sanctioned.
sanctioned. Thank you.
It also adds the ability to go after some very large pools of money with respect to grant funding. And I know that's very helpful to the city coffers as well.
So Diane, is that it? Can we go to Barb then? Barb Nelson? Barb's been talking to me about this for years, right?
He's tired of hearing it.
I'm not tired of hearing it.
Well, his neighborhood, right close to mine.
It's a
And
mess.
we desperately need some kind of an ordinance to get the elderly people in our neighborhoods to come forward. They wait until it's out of control. And what happens, they don't have transportation. So I'm gonna be working, trying to get into these areas with people to get their pets spayed and neutered. But 80-year-old Mrs. Jones passes away, 80-year-old Mrs. Smith down the street takes her 3 cats. Then all of a sudden, she's got 33 cats, we have a hoarding situation. She dies, the landlord throws them to the street. We need something about the landlords, or some kind of word, or that they can't be doing this, that they need to contact us, they have to contact someone and not put these cats on the street. But I've worked with one lady recently, it took me 2 months to get her to be honest and come forward and let me get, she only had a couple cats outdoors that she was taking care of, but I was able to get them taken care of for her. And so it makes a huge difference, but it takes a long time to get their trust. But if I had something from the city, that the city sanctions that we're not gonna take your cats and kill them, I promise you. And some people, this is the only thing they have in their life is that pet cat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Schneiderman.
You know, they've really covered it really well, but I'd be happy to help answer a question if you guys have.
Okay, thanks. Barb Nelson raised something that caused me to have a question in my mind. So I'll just ask this question, and I'm not sure that this bill necessarily covers this. But if a landlord does have the 33 cats and they've evicted that person, so what is our process then for the care and tending to this colony, which is no longer welcome at this particular address? So do we relocate them somewhere, or how are we planning to deal with that?
That's outlined in the ordinance. Let me see if I
It's
can
fine.
find.
It's very good if it is. It's
Yeah, it is. So, yeah, so, you know, if the colony cannot remain where it is, then reasonable efforts have to be made to relocate that colony. And that, I think that
And
has.
that's part of what the sponsor's doing.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm gonna try and find it in here, but I'm not.
It's, I think it's on page 8, 6. It talks about,
Yep, thank you.
responsibly identify and obtain replacement for feral cat colony within 30 days.
I thought there was a separate.
Yeah, that's for the sponsor, but
Yeah,
what about the
there
location?
is a separate place. I'm gonna find it for you. I apologize, I don't know
That's
where it is.
fine. No, I understand.
Cat colony person?
Oh, here it is, number 4, cannot be found, but sponsors shall make reasonable efforts to relocate the cats to another location. Okay, so because these kind of practical legal policy issues, I'm hopeful that everybody understands why we're doing this, because I hope it's clear why we're doing this, but in terms of the actual process, because we haven't done this before, it's helpful to let everybody know about that.
Could I also address one aspect of your
Sure.
question? There's also a huge money-saving component to doing it this way, and I can give you several examples, because we actually have made some efforts to relocate some cats. It's hard, it's excruciatingly difficult, but we're doing it all the time, even though that's always our last resort. And if you think about the money that it saves, not just the heartache that it saves, but the money, because if you had to kill all those cats, it's an enormous amount of money. It's a waste of life, but it's also a huge amount of money spent on that.
I understand, and I suspect most of the folks, I suspect everybody in this room understands that. The issue is we have landlords who probably don't understand that, and so if we've not given something that's very clear in terms of guidance about how we're going to deal with that, the options are going to be the ones that happen on the street, and obviously that's what we're trying to avoid. So,
I had one thing
okay,
as a landlord.
so is there a motion, are you finished, or you want to close on your bill?
No, I think everyone spoke well as to why this bill makes sense, and I ask for your passage on to the floor.
So I will make a motion that we pass Board Bill 66 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Second, previous row.
If there's no objection to previous roll, Board Bill 66 comes out of committee with a due meow pass recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I know this is going to continue to work better and better and better.